Hi everybody, it's Roy here from Roy Reads Anything, a channel about old books that are strange or interesting or just weird. And this is a Garb August announcement video. Yes, because next month, August, is the greatest booktube event of the year. A whole month of reading trashy books. The brainchild of CriminOlly, who will be renamed for the month as Screamin' Creamin' Olly. Blimey,
Sorry.
names are amusing. I was going to gloss over that aspect. Yes, so a month of reading trashy books. Now, I imagine lots of people have seen Garb August stuff already, but let me explain. So, trashy books, not as in bad. You know, who would want to spend a month reading bad books? We're really talking about books that are entertaining, product for the market kind of books, as opposed to perhaps more sort of literary endeavours. And it's easy to join in. It's about, whatever you perceive as being that, read some of that during August. It's fun. But there will be prompts for each week for those of us who like a sort of structured approach, and who want to sort of treat it as a little bit of a challenge. Should say this year I'm honoured to have become, is moving towards my booktube birthday of 1 year, to be a one of the co-hosts, which is why I've got the ceremonial emblem of Trashy writing. A it's a typewriter. Dr. Jenny has a matching one. Yeah, well, maybe not at this resolution. Dr. Jenny has a matching one that's a lot classier. Hers is a quill pen with a drop of black ink from at the end.
It's very beautiful.
And also the ceremonial attire for the month. I won't be taking this shirt off until the end of August. So,
as long as I don't have to wear one as well.
Yes, trash. Like I say, not about bad. I think it's partly about writing books that are published to, as it were, cash in on some kind of trend or popular idea in publishing. So, here's how it looks to me. Imagine there's a line, and at one end of the line, you've got highly original books, where the author creates something from their own ideas about how they see the world, basically, sort of a one-off creation that's produced as an artistic endeavour. And at the other end, we have work that is derivative of what's gone before. It's fitting into a niche. It's if it's number 117 in a series, for instance, clearly it's highly influenced by the previous 116 books. It's product. You know what you're getting, and you could position any book ever somewhere along this scale of how original, as opposed to how sort of derivative you think it is. So that's one thing, with the trashy end being this end, obviously. But I don't think it's just that, because in a way all books are promoted by their publishers to fit in with some sort of preconceptions. Otherwise we wouldn't know what to buy. So imagine there's another line with sensation at the top. Books with lots of sensational, lurid happenings and tastefulness. At the bottom, good taste. You got good taste, as the Cramps song would tell us. So, where things happen that are plausibly going to happen in the real world at a sort of realistic pace. Okay, so again, you could take any book ever and position the same books, position it along the line, and then you could plot a position on this map based on those two axes. So, for example, take a non-trashy book, Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. So I would say that's very original work. It's, you know, it won a Booker Prize, so let's say it's very literary. So it's going to be down at this end. Also, the things that happen in it, it's about a butler who's worked in the same big house for his whole life. He's now having a motoring holiday around England and doing some reminiscing. So everything could really happen. It's reflective. It's there's lots of layers of meaning. There's things you have to sort of read into it to know what's really going on. And it's brilliant, by the way. So, you know, highly highly realistic and tasteful, very original. So it's probably somewhere down here. Um, there are Nazis in that book, but the Nazis aren't like firing guns at you or anything. If they were, it would probably creep up a little bit. If they were the kind of Nazis who do things like rescuing Hitler's brain and installing it in a killer robot, that would bring it up here somewhere. And if the butler fellow had to become a one-man army to defeat the menace, you know, we would be moving Sir Casuo's book over into the trashy area. If he's watching and he's like thinking of ideas for a sequel, you can have those. But you know, maybe you can see the difference. I just moving to the old library of things I've been saving for this month. I think there's something too about the way sort of trash fiction, as we're describing it, it gives you everything. Or it gives you stuff up front. It gives you what's on the cover. So, take for instance, The Rats by James Herbert, a horror novel from the 1970s. Now, I've not read this yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm on solid ground saying that it will be about rats. Okay, the rats won't be a metaphor, or something. It won't be the unbearable rattiness of being, as it were.
But that would be good too.
Well, yeah, maybe that's layered in. See, artistic quality could be anywhere on this map. I would argue. So yes, rats. I also don't think we're going to only get subtle hints of the rats coming towards us and you know, maybe building up to a big rat scene at the end. I think there's going to be. We've bought a book called The Rats. I think we're going to get animal attacks frequently punctuating the book, just as in a romance book, like a Mills and Boon book. You're going to get lots and lots of steamy clinches and romantic situations, all of that. So there's something about putting it all out there, giving you what you expect, and doing it well, doing it with artistry. You know, again, I think there's literary skill involved in doing stuff like this so that it works properly, especially at the pace some of the writers have to work. I was always a bit annoyed when Sebastian Faulks, middle-brow litfic author, wrote a James Bond book, and in the publicity for that, he was saying, "Well, normally it's like normally I write symphonies, and this is like writing a pop song," which is a bit dismissive, especially as it wasn't actually a very good James Bond book. So I would suggest that he might be right, but the skill involved in writing a brilliant pop song that people are going to be remembering for decades to come, it might be different from the skills involved in writing a symphony, but it's still really important. So there's my theory. Got that off my chest. Right, those prompts I mentioned. What are they? So, week 1, category romance or men's adventure. So I haven't got my personal TBR. It's fluid at the moment. But when it comes to category romance, I've got my giant stack of Euromances. So these were 90s Mills and Boon books, Harlequins in America and Australia, mass produced, loads of them, giving you what you expect. So, for instance, Designed to Annoy by Elizabeth Oldfield. I think these get extra points for the sort of cashing in on a trend, because these came out to capitalise on Britain going into European community, that being like a thing in the world that was being reflected in paperback literature in 160 pages. Hooray! So could be reading something like this. Men's Adventure, things like, there are long series featuring vigilante characters, featuring sort of spy type characters, post-apocalyptic adventures. One I got in a set was John Eagle Expediter. Expediter. It's like, I think they were running low on names. It sounds like he's working for Hermes or something. But John Eagle has the blood of the Scottish border fighters in his veins. To this has been added a very special education in death dealing equipment and the disciplined training of an Apache warrior to make him a unique and deadly kind of modern special agent, the Expediter.
Please don't read it.
Well, somebody's got to.
Yeah,
It's called Needles. I don't want to read it out loud, am I? Needles of Death is a gripping, exciting tale of personal audacity and animal courage. One man, often the case, against impossible odds in his effort to save the Western world. Look out for John Eagle's second mission, the Brain Scavengers. So that would be the sort of territory for week 1. Week 2, Paperbacks from Hell, is exactly things like this. Vintage horror books, particularly as repopularised by Grady Hendrix in his book Paperbacks from Hell. Yeah, I'll probably it's odd that I've never read this. I probably will read that, having given it such a big build up. And Novella is reading it as well, so it would be kind of a ratty buddy read going on there, which is good. Or vintage smut. I do not have vintage smut. I'm relying on the postman. The postman.
What?
The postman in his professional capacity as a deliverer of things I have bought to bring me the vintage smut. It's not, we're not in a club or anything.
Don't tell them about the club.
Things like Jackie Collins would be a good example of vintage smut. Now, they seem recent to me, but I'm probably getting something both older
And smutty.
Older and shorter, like me. Older and thinner, not older and shorter. What am I talking about? I can't remember. Week 3, anyway. Cruising into week 3. Novelisations or books by famous people. Books by famous people. Well, I know that Brat Pack actor Molly Ringwald has a book. It doesn't look very trashy though. I think there's the fact that books written by famous people are kind of derived from their fame and probably wouldn't be published if not for that, sort of puts them at this end of the scale. But if they're not lurid and sensational, then I think that's maybe not quite in the zone. Lauren Graham, on the other hand, of Gilmore Girls fame, her book someday maybe. This is so terrible. I got it from one of those second-hand sellers with the word world in the name, where you never quite know what you're going to get and what condition it's going to be in. And this one seems to have been eaten by a buffalo and then excreted onto the prairie and trampled by the rest of the herd of buffalo. Let's hope that's not the best thing about it. Yeah, this to me looks a little bit trashier in that the plot seems to be based on the sort of characters she plays, So if you're sort of like, yeah, I like Lauren Graham, I like Lorelei Gilmore, let's have some more of that in book form. Could be being.
Do you know, I just realised that they share the initials.
Oh,
Laura
yeah.
Graham, Lorelei Gilmore.
There you go. See, it's trash. It's educational. Could be those, but I've got another idea. But it relies on the postman, like so many things. Oh, I know. Novelisations. Novelisations. Smashing time. I've been looking for this for ages, and I should say I'm trying to do as much of this as possible with vintage books, which might deselect Lauren Graham for not being vintage enough. Smashing Time was a movie in 1968 that had a novelisation. It's the hippiest, happiest rave of the year. So it's a movie that cashes in on this trend in society of like Carnaby Street, hippies, all that sort of business. Summer of Love, having been the year before, and it's a novelisation of that. So it's part of sort of an endless chain of adaptation. Two psyche delicious, delirious, delectable chicks from the town of Slagheap, that would be a northern town, come to glue their crazy peepers on swinging London. They dig, they flip. See, this might sound ironic now. I'm telling you, this would not have as many layers of irony over it as it would have done when this book came out. They dig, they flip at the kooky birds, mini mods, and dishy boys. They make with the action in Soho, Carnaby Street, photographer studios, and recording sessions. Recording sessions. For Brenda and Yvonne, it all happens here, in the wild, young, groovy world of pop, in quotes, idols, models, debs, agents, and promoters, where the man with the camera makes or breaks and success calls the tune. Do yourself a favour, have a smashing time. So that could happen. Week 4 and any leftover periods of time in August, anything goes, literally anything. I have a secret item for that will not be revealed until that week. But my backup book is Ambulance by Hugh Miller. I would love it if it was actually called Ambulance, 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 but it's just called Ambulance. Now, this is not the Hugh Miller, the Scottish geologist, whose house is owned by the National Trust for Scotland and that we visited many times in Cromarty. This is Hugh Miller, pulp novelist, who I came across in an article from the Sunday Mirror in 1973 called Cooking the Books. Inside page spills the beans today on the instant novel. Made to a formula like instant coffee, brewed almost as fast and sold like the rest of the groceries. Obviously they were anticipating Garb August and doing an article about it 50 years ago. It is the new gold mine in the book business for both writer and publishers. Pioneered in this country by the New English Library. Absolutely. Because who's publishing Rats? New English Library. Lots of others. Who put out Harold Robbins. They took a technique used for decades for pulp writers and have foisted it on the more sophisticated market.
What?
Okay.
Literally makes no sense.
Here are 3 members of their instant book brewers. Like the best cooks, all are men. Just maybe there's in there, you've got to have sexism as well. They just threw that in there. So the 3 authors in question: Terry Harknett, alias George G. Gilman of Edge book fame, who we've both met, and is a top gentleman. Yes. So at this time, he only had 25 books rated, 16 in the pipeline.
What the trash does to you.
I know, I'm obviously not part of this more sophisticated market they were talking about. Had never read one. Westerns are his speciality. Had never read one a few years ago. The New English Library asked for spaghetti westerns. So Harknett thought up a character called Edge. So far, he's the hero of 10 books, each selling more than 100,000. The money is good, says Harknett. Then, in the middle of this trinity, not saying an unholy trinity perhaps, Jim Moffat, the veteran. 25 years, has published 313 books under 53 names. for New English Library sold 1,750,000 copies of 36 books, and that would include the Skinhead series, a classic example of cashing in on fears in society. Skinhead, Suede Head, etc., etc., all the way through to a rather lame one about the mod revival in the early 80s. Used to work for an oil company, writes romance, spy, detective, sci-fi. Quickest, Where Blows the Wind by Anne North. Lesbian Tale, written in 36 hours. Quotes, because I needed money. Anyway, yes, Hugh Miller.
That was how little he knew about lesbian.
Where's my ambulance book gone? Hugh Miller, ambulance writer, who ended up, by the way, was probably quite a plum job when EastEnders, the first BBC's first soap opera in the UK, when that started, he wrote the novels that went with that, and there's quite a few of those. Probably a decent job there. Hugh Miller, a former magician, has written 20 books on magic. In the past year has turned out 8 novels for New English Library. 10 days is enough for one of his regular productions, written for the bread. About to tackle horror for the first time. So, oh yeah, used to be a mortician. Interesting. So, ambulance, featured in a hospital, which I think also, as well as the prompts, there's also Gar Bingo. So another thing, I'll link to all these resources down below. There's like a bingo game, so you can fill in squares if you've done different things. I don't think anybody is going to do all of them, but things like a book that cashes in on a moral panic, that could count as one. A book set in a hospital. Well, I'm assuming the ambulance does eventually arrive at a hospital. So yes, I'm not going to set out to do this and get a rose. There's a danger with these events; they can become a bit of a burden. But at the end, I'll see what I've happened to have done. A book with a step back cover. Step back, as in a cover, die cut cover like this one for At Gravesend, a Night Huntress novel, where you not only get a cover, you get extra covers inside. I know. So you're getting top entertainment before you've even.
I'd never even read that. I'd just be doing
step
that
back.
all the time.
And you've got to say step back.
Step back.
Every time you see it, yeah. So yes, Garb August. I'm ready. I've got my safety equipment also. So good to go. Hope people can join in. Be back near the time with the actual TBRs and how I'm getting on with the prompts and how this shirt's getting on for a month of wear, that sort of thing. Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll also be back soon with something else.